Hello!
Welcome to Gen Z Meets World podcast.
I am Aeshah.
I'm Ahmad, and today we'll be talking about homeschooling.
Homeschooling, which is we have, like we always mentioned, we homeschool. It's a well-established known fact that we homeschool. Except if this is your first episode, which okay, anyway.
But I guess first of all we could lay down like the differences between homeschool and the opposite, or like the general opposite of homeschooling, which would
is
be
formal schooling. Yeah. So by definition, homeschool would usually be defined like Cambridge says it's something like the teaching of children at home or one's children at home. And I think some other like most dictionary would say like teaching of children at home. And usually there are two different common conceptions on like what is homeschool. One is that anything but formal schooling. So if you go to tuitions for schooling, like as your academic studying, etc., then it's homeschooling. If you go to these, there are these institutions where they have like it's not an institute. So like there are these things which people make where they have like, it's not a private school, but it is like a private property where they hold classes and they have uniforms and etc. But they do it at a home and then they call it homeschooling. And people come to go to that, but it's not a school. And I'm not sure exactly how is it differed from proper schooling, and I'm not sure if it still can be considered as homeschooling, because I think one of the prime aspects of homeschooling is the inclusion of parents in the education.
Family, the
or
house,
guardian,
the institution of the house. The household, yes.
So, I mean, definitely for me, usually when I am referring to homeschooling, I would be referring to like the home teaching, the one where either parents or guardians, like the household, teaches the children, even if they have like tutors who come to the home home. Yeah, I mean, like who are there? Even if they have tutors who help the children learn, or they send the children to tuitions, there is that the parent or guardian or household aspect is still there. You know, there's still that learning at home aspect. I think that's how I usually refer to when saying homeschooling. And formal schooling is obviously So first of all, why do we homeschool? That's one of the first questions people often ask, homeschool. Why do you homeschool? That's actually the second question. The first question, we'll talk about it later, but first of all, why do you homeschool?
I'm actually not clear about that myself, because the thing is that I don't think our parents exactly told us specifically this is because the things we did not ask
we
to
never
begin
asked.
with.
I think we've always like whenever when the idea came, we've always been like, that sounds like a good idea. Sure, let's go. There's nothing in life.
Never asked them to explain specifically why. So, but generally based on like seeing what they reply to other people asking them, it's hard to say as well, because the answer
the answer often differs from people to people. So you're not sure like which of that is the exact answer of like,
it could
why.
be all of them.
Yeah, that's true. And then they just like sort of like
which one that fits the situation, or which one that comes into their head at that time.
Or maybe they're just like, oh my god, why do you ask so much questions? But as a timeline, like a guide for like, because I feel like we might be referring to this and it'd be confusing. There's 4 of us. The first person who was homeschooled was our eldest sister. We weren't homeschooled at the same time. Our eldest sister was homeschooled first. Her last year was her 6th year. Then she was homeschooled. And then after that, it was me and our other sister Anissa, who I was at that time. My last year was my 5th year, and Anissa, her last year was her 3rd year. And then you never went to school because you were supposed to go to school the year after that. I think 5th year means by 6th year you weren't going to school yet.
I was supposed to go to school in
the year
2009.
after that.
But the last year that you went to school was 2008.
Yeah.
So
no, you were supposed to go to school 2010. You were born 2003. Yeah.
I forgot it's 7, not 6. I get that mixed up.
Yeah. So you're supposed to go to school 2010, but you didn't.
Yeah.
Because we were like the three of us were already homeschooled. They're like, why would you send this one random child?
Yeah.
So I think probably by that sense, probably why you were homeschooled is because everyone else is homeschooled already.
That's.
But then why they started homeschooling, our eldest sister, I think it was because they were trying. Our parents have always been very serious about looking for the best education to their
because
standards of expectation.
Our parents really feel that education is really
Very,
important for like the whole concept, not just academic education, but like the educating of a person.
Yeah. The being,
the building of the person's character and
personality and emotion and worldview and etc.
Everything.
Yeah. So
anything that's not automated by your own body through eating and growing and stuff.
But then even that is somewhat influenced.
But like
what if that is still a concern then? But okay, so our father specifically, I remember. Our parents were trying to find like a suitable secondary school, because like our eldest sister 6th year, then after that you move to your secondary education. So they were trying to find a suitable secondary school. They couldn't, or at least they couldn't find any that suits their satisfy them. And then the principal or headmistress, it's a female, it's not it, suggested to our parents that they should try homeschooling, because they were saying that because she wasn't okay. Our parents sent our eldest sister to the school, but then after that they moved it to a different school, and then they wanted to move back to that school. School A was our sister's school.
First school.
Yeah. Then she moved to school B. Then one day she was going to move back to school A, but the headmistress or the principal, I can't remember her position, of school A was saying that she doesn't think it's a wise idea, because there had been changes that has been going on in the school, like change of ownership, etc. And she was actually not very happy with the environment the children were growing up in. She was quite worried. And so she said that because it would be a shame for our elder sister, who she believed to hold so much promise, to go to that school and lose that promise, sort of like. So she said, why don't you guys homeschool? And then our mother is like, homeschool? What is that? No. So I'm seeing it at, homeschool is, but no, they had this discussion. Yeah. And then our parents like, all right, let's try homeschooling. So our eldest sister was homeschooled. So that was our eldest sister. And then I was still schooling then, because that was supposed to be a temporary measure while they couldn't find a secondary school. But then eventually they asked when after I finished my 5th year, for one reason or another, I do not know, they probably had a very intense and serious conversation about it. But then one day our father asked me if, like, at the end of my 5th year, he asked me, do you want to still go to school, or do you want to be homeschooled like our eldest sister? And I remember then I was facing a few problems with schooling. Mostly there were a few things that were bothering me, but then mostly one was I was feeling very upset with the school environment, because I witnessed a lot of bullying and abuse, even if it's not physical abuse, like mental abuse to like children, like not just like teachers to children, because that's often the thing people think about, but then even like children with children to teachers, just the whole environment.
In your case, it's more often children to children, I think, from what I heard at least.
Well, that was definitely the thing that I was like most aware of back then, definitely. But yeah, it's just that the environment didn't feel like a cool place for kids to grow up in, and I was this very passionate looking into the world and seeing like this shouldn't be the ideal situation. and so we should take these actions. But no one was interested in taking those actions. And I'm like telling these people like we should be doing this. They're like looking at me like, I'm telling my classmates, and they're like, I was like, what, 2? Like not 2, like 8, year 2,
year 2,
second year, and they're like,
that's 8.
Yeah, 8. I was 8. So they're like, and I'm like, we should be like, I'm like, having these campaign ideas of like, like, okay, ways that we can eradicate this problem, but no one is on board. And I'm like, yeah, maybe they're too young to understand this. And I tried to bring them up to like, older students. They're like cute and kid, and it was making me very frustrated. So I was also lacking in falling behind in my studies because sometimes when you sometimes I don't like saying it this way because it makes me sound like a snob and like a nerd, and I don't mind being a nerd, like a snob, like someone who's like, and very like, oh, you think you're so great. But then back then I was like ahead of my curricula, like I completed the whole syllabus like by April. Most of the time I'm just like finishing my work too early, and then so I spend most of the year being bored because I love learning. I passionately love learning. Like academic pursuit was like my life goal back then. But then I can't pursue it. I have to just sit here. I don't mind, to be honest, I didn't mind learning the same thing again and again, because sometimes I always believe that you learn new perspectives. But then I am sometimes forced to do the same work again and again, and I want to learn. Like sometimes I see something new, I'm like, oh, can you do this? But then I can't do it, and that restriction eventually gets very frustrating. And so eventually I just lose interest in doing the test because I'm like, I can do that. Why do I need to do this test thing? However, when I get bad scores or scores I didn't deem myself worthy of, at least, I'm like, why do I get the score I'm not supposed to, but so all of that was like making me very frustrated and just overwhelmed in general. I think by then I was feeling very, very, very overwhelmed by the many things that was like, going on and etc. And I'm like, yeah, let's homeschool. And my father is like, which probably means that they already made the decision to homeschool us. They're just like testing, like, would you make the right decision, child? You are good. But that was why that was like
when,
why our perspective then, that was what we saw of why we were homeschooled. Now, with the hindsight of like looking back and the perspective we have now, we believe most probably our parents homeschooled us because they were thinking of they wanted to make sure that we grew up in a good environment for children to grow up in, and B, it was probably because they wanted to give us to their standards a more holistic education, which means that it isn't just focused on the academics but also on other stuff, and also B, not just focused on certain subjects but also other stuff, and then C, also not limited to a certain age-defined level of education, because national syllabuses, plural syllabus.
I think syllabus is like already
plural. What singular
like,
syllable?
No, like
oh, there's no plural word for it.
There's no plural
okay,
word.
I get that. Yes.
Like,
National.
syllable.
Like not just local national syllabus, like national syllabus in general have that age defined.
National syllabus in brackets S.
Yeah, maybe. So that was probably why we were homeschooled. Probably. We still do not know the definite answer, but probably. So how would you say we were homeschooled?
Like method or
method.
In my case specifically, I think it started with a very similar concept as
formal schooling.
So I would be studying and my mom would be teaching me, because our mother would be the one teaching.
She teaches like all like she's the one who's like hands on there teaching us everything.
So she's the one who will be teaching me, and it will be like she will start to tell me, but okay, the subject's like this, you have this and this and this, explaining what's being taught in the book. and then after that I will be doing exercises, and then she will be marking them, and then so eventually she would let me read on my own. If I do not understand certain things, I will
then
ask her,
yeah.
and then I will do the exercises, and then she will mark them, and eventually I would mark my own exercises because I could
already
refer
or
to
like more like she trusts you to try first before referring to the answer, because sometimes you're like, you do not want to answer this question, looks at answer sheet copies.
So eventually it becomes more and more independent. And I think I cannot remember, it's kind of point properly which year was it, but eventually it became like really
almost non-schooling even. That's the thing. I think because they never had a background study or research or whatever, exposure to homeschooling, so they weren't really sure, like our parents weren't really sure what to do, and our father was like, you do the stuff, you should be good at it, to our mother, so our mother had to do everything. But then, so I think initially she tried to do like a formal education style studying,
because that's the base that we could see and we could follow.
Where we follow the national syllabus, we get the reference books and the textbooks and activity books, we do the exercises. The only difference is that for us, like for me, because I was older, she almost never marked my work. I would mark them on my own, except on like more subjective questions. As in,
I mean, eventually when I did subjective questions, she still marked them.
Not like subjective question as in like subjective question, like more subjective question. Like there's no objective yes, no, correct, wrong.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, like English works.
Right.
Yeah. So those she would still mark them.
I mean, English works will be pretty hard for us to.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it on our own,
they're
because
subjective.
If we could do it on our own, then we will get full marks because we won't be.
So so that was like initially the method. The only difference is that we had this no. The only difference is that two things. One, we don't have like a strict timetable that we had to adhere to. She did give like general rule. She tells us to make our own timetable if we want to. I did because I needed routine. But then there isn't like, a very strict 9 o'clock and 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock out. Like you like she was like, it's up to you. As long as you get this much work done.
Yeah.
A. B, if we finish something quicker or take a longer time to do something, we could. Like we could study at our own pace. Like it doesn't have to be this speed or that speed, you know. It's not just a matter of being able to advance quicker, but it's also you can take a longer time on a subject which is harder for you. So you could pace it. But I think because the thing is that because it was just like mostly experiments and seeing what works, so eventually they were like seeing that you don't actually need that very strict formal education style learning. So first of all, our mother realized that there is one problem that people often face when they advance in their education, where after being for so long having such close contact or like sort of like what do you call that, guidance from teachers, when they go to university they often have a problem because there's like they need to learn to discipline themselves. And also to, in a way, do their own research.
Work on things on their own.
Which is a sudden shift for a lot of people.
Because it's directly from, from the last year at school.
Everything's enforced on you.
Everything is still the same as the first year of school. And then the first year of
university
is
just drastically
it's already
different.
the same as, the last year of university. Everything is to a different level.
So there's such a drastic change. So people often like fall back during that moment where they're like, oh, they don't know how to do this thing. So our mother really wanted to make sure that we know how to discipline ourselves, we know how to motivate ourselves. And so she like let go a little but monitor our
she still monitors even till the end. Like even right now that we're done with the school part of
schooling.
Yeah.
She still monitors. So that was like, the idea was that, so that if we, first of all, if we can immediately do it, then cool.
Yeah.
You know, we're cool. But if we fall back, if we, you know, couldn't catch up, and at least we would fall back now and realize it now when it's not so dire, rather than falling back during university.
Because right now, at least we have the time to sort of like
catch up. Yeah. So yeah, I think that was like the initial shift in like her style of teaching, and then eventually we our father was like getting like, he would no longer work in a formal. We were all no longer formally involved. Like, he was no longer having a formal work. Okay, he like retired early from his formal work. So he started to focus a lot more in like volunteer works and activism and research, you know, like a more freelance kind of like work. So he was also including us in them, you know, like we mentioned in the previous episode. Like, if he had like, you know, certain, like, say for example he has this event, like a charitable event, or you know, etc., like etc. Yeah, we would be included as like, either initially he just like brought us into like just listen and participate like that, you know, but then eventually he'd have us take part in like organizing like, the event. Not the organizing what do you call
stuff,
it, managing the event.
Managing the event. But even managing, it's not the managing like, okay, this is we're like this the workers.
Yeah, but you know, it's still managing.
But like, I feel
not
like
the manager.
Yeah, not the top managing.
Yeah.
The lower
little feet doing stuff.
Yeah.
So what was the point? Oh yeah. So so when we are the more we are included, like the more of those works we're included in, the less time we have for like proper routine studies.
Yeah.
Also, our parents discovered that when we homeschool, we can go to places during weekdays and it's not as, you know, packed. So we go to do our groceries on the weekdays. We go, if we have a family trip, we do them on weekdays. So that kind of like messes up the whole routine thing, because, you know, there's no strict Monday you do it or Wednesday you do it. So we couldn't have like proper timetables. So we start to just learn when we have the time. Otherwise we do this other bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
A bit of a mess for me, admittedly, because I had a bit of a problem with that.
It's definitely a mess for me that I did not realize then.
Yeah.
And eventually I noticed that I should have managed it better.
Yeah.
Because when there's nothing, I guess that we could say that that's a bit of a disadvantage, because if you do not manage it, like I think the biggest thing I've learned is that just because you have the flexibility doesn't mean that you should leave it flexible.
Yeah.
It should be flexible. It should be flexible, but it should not be
just because there's a flexibility doesn't mean you have to not be strict.
Not put any sort of guideline.
Yeah.
So you have the guideline, but the guideline is flexible. In my case, it's flexible and little to zero guidelines. So it was, you know,
you're just floating.
Yeah. So there should be a sort of a guideline that you could, you know, even when you're floating on the guideline rather than.
Yeah. So that was a good analogy. So that was I think that was like the evolution of our homeschool.
Yeah.
And then eventually we just like a lot more included. Eventually, most of our life is the work aspect.
Yeah.
That, which in a way is still learning. Yeah. But then it's just not schooling.
And a lot of times not the school syllabus thing.
A lot of what we learn are definitely not like school stuff. Yeah, that's true. So that was like, as we got like more involved in all those, and you know, we like have less time, then less focus, and then we just eventually we realized that it's sort of like, I think that they realized that there's a lot to learning, and so we learned the many aspects of learning too. But yeah, I think that's in a nutshell how we homeschool. Yeah. So some of the questions that's like often asked when people
ask us
they find out that we are homeschooling.
Right.
there are two questions that they often ask. One is like, how is it that, which is kind of related to the thing that I was talking about just now, about like the motivation to study, the independence, they often like, how do you have the motivation to study without having like this syllabus, this test to look forward to? Because the test sort of like keeps you need to study this now.
This goal for, by this point we need to study all of this. By this point we need to study all of this.
So how can you study without having that deadline? That test thing. B, how can you study without having sort of like not just peer motivation? Peer motivation in the sense of both. One is like having like study friends who studying the same thing as you are. Another is having competition. Competition seemingly is a very large part in motivating a person to study, at least from the teachers who have asked us this question, So like there is that need for like that external encouragement, however, what I think really helps us, is that tactic that our mother came up with when she realizes that it would be a problem if we do not have external encouragement. And so she puts us in a situation where we don't have any external encouragement, and we realize that we are falling back, and thus we make that internal encouragement. And she's there to guide us, like she leaves us for a moment, we realize we fall back, then she like, it's like the best way of learning. You fall first. Like you can't know how happy you can be unless you feel so sad,
because you're in the desperate condition where you really need to work on that.
In certain ways that can be like a dark story, like like Stockholm syndrome. but no, in this case it's just learning. So like realizing the importance, like she was making us realize the importance of independence. So but then also the thing is, perhaps we needed encouragement to have like strict study learning, but we have never been demotivated to learn. I think we have been our parents were very cautious about making sure that we are exposed to learning, and we learn to learn. Sorry, that's too confusing. They make sure that we learn. They make sure that we feel that learning is fun. Learning is enjoyment. They try to integrate learning in every aspect of our life. In our leisure activities, they try to make it, as educational as possible. So thus, learning becomes a joy. And so you just want to learn. You get frustrated when you're not learning anything. And in fact, that was the reason why we were getting bored at school, because we were not learning,
Not we.
I'm sorry. Like we, as in me and our elder sister.
Inclusive we.
No,
exclusive
we. So I think the fact that you need a test to be motivated to learn, and also peer motivation, it doesn't just speak about disciplines, but it also speaks about the reason why you're learning.
The reason.
Learning should be part of life.
I can't find the right. There's another word that I wanted to use, but I can't. No, it's right.
We should have one episode on learning. Where we go in depth into that. But basically, how did they do it? I think two things. Well, how are we able to do it? I think there were two things. One is that our mother did realize that was going to be a problem. Thus, she did things like let us learn how important it is to have that internal encouragement. And so when you realize you need how important it is, you are more motivated to do it. More. You can be just, oh man, life, what to do. But then chances are you'll be more like desperate to actually build on it, and most of the time it's about willpower. So you have more will, you have a stronger will to do it. B, also because of the way our parents brought us up, since we were a baby, we have been taught how fun learning is, and we haven't been demotivated to learn. So we just kept on learning, and it's fun, it's part of life. And if for now you're thinking like, oh, that's not cool, I didn't have a good upbringing like that, I want to find learning motivational too, well, just find it. Like, learning is fun. Okay, but another question that people often ask, which actually is the number one question that people ask, which is not even a question, it's just skepticism, it's a conception, it is already a thing that they're like label you once they know that you are homeschool. Is, how do you have social skills? Don't you have no social skills? It's either they look at us and like, oh, this child does not have social skills then because they're homeschooled. Or they're like, how are you sociable? You're not supposed to be. You're homeschooled. And I think the misconception comes from the idea that when you're homeschooled, you do not have that peer
school friends, simply put.
Peer environment.
Yeah. So, because, when you're at school, you'll have people of your peers all around you all the time, learning together and, talking together at lunch.
Yeah.
All those things.
One of the things, and also like doing school works, like group works and etc. One of the things that I often realize is that actually, though, when you go to school, there's like a few things, of course, but then like one of the things is that when you go to school, you can actually choose the people who you want to be sociable with. And so you do in some ways learn a lot of social skills, undeniably. And it's probably it's probably no difference in the first place. But the thing is, when you are living in your home, you are in some ways forced to be sociable with the people that are just there, and you can't choose. You can choose, but then you're not. When you've been living for like so long, you end up not choosing who to be sociable with. So
it goes back to the point of like it brings you I would say like more tolerance. So not tolerance, but like, the ability to be able to work around even if the person is not exactly
in some ways
fully your type.
Yeah.
Because
that is though if your family is
your type. But if there are some families where people just click on with each other very easily, so that there won't be a problem there.
So there is this study by, it's an institution on like education in the United States, I think, and so the sample is like United States children, American children, or like like people of that nationality. So they studied like the differences between the social skills of like formal school children and also homeschooled children, and the results did come that there wasn't any difference between these two, and in fact there are some homeschooled children who have higher social skills. And chances are, the reason behind that, because they also studied sort of like the tendency to be involved in civic work, and also like how involved you are in civic work, like the tendency after you finish schooling, and also like then there wasn't much difference, but the tendency for you to be involved in civic work, it was higher for the homeschooled children, which means that chances are the homeschooled children are more exposed to, either they are more motivated, they realize their civic responsibility because of however environment they grow up in, or they are exposed to civic works a lot more than school children are. And in our case specifically, because of the whole works that we've been doing and going around with our father, we are exposed to those, and so those are our social environment that we learn to socialize in. We do get different skill sets, I'd say, because the thing is that with formal school, you tend to learn how to socialize with your peer group and this authority, and that's it. There is no
the students and the teachers.
The peers and the authority. There is like, you don't even interact with your seniors as much. There's that segregation. So whereas for us, we don't have that.
And I guess that it doesn't really pose a problem in a normal in a standard typical situation, because even if you working in an office, you have your peers, which are your friends in the office, in the same office, and then the authority, which it's basically the same, a very similar concept to school.
Definitely.
Social.
However, there are two sides to that. One is that perhaps then that skill is not that needed, the homeschooled skill. However, it is also true that homeschooled children would have that additional skill, which is cool.
By the time they come out of school age.
Yeah, they have that skill. So that's cool. But B, what if, in the first place, that is the reason why that segregation happens in the workplace and in life in general? Because you are conditioned to live that way. And so that's why it is hard for employees and employers to be on the same level, to
relate in the first place,
or even the workplace people, for the juniors and the seniors to relate, or in a wider sense, generation gaps. What if that's the reason why generation gaps exist? Because it,
and in a more wider sense, like society in general.
In society, like there's that generation gap.
No, not just generation, but like people of different fields and different
that's also true.
places.
Okay, hold a second. Let's finish generation
gap.
first. So in that generation gap, because you don't often mix with people of a different, out of your peer group, so you have you're a bit more confused of how to interact with these other people. Either that, or you just see them as alien.
Yeah.
So you just do not interact, and so that gap happens
as an alien.
Yes, and so that gap happens, and then society is divided. Even in families, with I think we mentioned this one in the previous episode, where there's that sibling gap thing because of the age difference. Because there is that, because you grow up in that environment where you grow up with people of your age, so it's harder for you to interact with people not your age. Or you do not see because you do not see it. Yes, because you do not see the perspective, so it's harder for you to understand. Now on the field side, that may also be because of the application of things like societies, what do you call that, subject streams.
Streams.
So what if that's also part of the thing? So that's interesting. There's a whole other wormhole. I mean, in fact, even included in that is the concept of prestige, that formal education, because there is this that concept is born out of that idea that formal education is more credible
than non-formal
education, and in some ways it instills and how do you call that, a conception. It instills that respect for prestige or exclusivity. What is exclusive is more credible. What is prestige is more credible. Being part of the Mensa Institute is smarter. Being part of this school society is smarter. Being in this university is smarter, And that just... You were saying something? No.
Okay.
And that just kind of goes into how society ends up looking into the world, which, to be honest, for me is a little bit problematic, It
is. It's basically if you were to take, have many... Let's just take apples, and you put the higher quality ones in a certain basket, but you accidentally leave out some of the higher quality ones. They're still high quality. It's just that they're not sitting in the same basket.
Or in the higher quality basket, apple
you accidentally place that one instead of that one.
Or someone wants to put this. You want to put this apple there.
Yeah, because this apple is very red, even though it's
it's not that of a high quality. But when people is in that basket, people just believe that it is a high quality.
So basically,
or the apple bribed its way into the basket. But
I mean, if the apple can bribe its way into the basket,
So, but then, that definitely delivers. That is, I'd say, I mean, formal schooling is not all that, not just all the bad effects. That's the problem with the debate of homeschooling versus formal schooling. Wait, did I say homeschool or formal schooling? I meant to say formal schooling. Formal schooling is not all negative, all that effects.
Yeah, I think you said formal schooling.
Yeah, okay. I do believe that those effects come out of formal schooling, which is not cool. which should be given attention to,
Yeah.
you know. But it's not saying that formal schooling is all bad.
And it's not exactly the fault of formal schooling.
Yeah, rather the system that people adhere to.
And the perception to begin with.
Yeah.
The system exists because of the perception.
And the perception exists because of the system.
So
and then the system exists because of the perception.
Back to chicken and egg. So, but then, you know, in the first place, if we
circle has no beginning.
If you could eliminate that factor, then formal schooling will get rid of that factor, which will, you know,
and a new problem will
problems
be born.
will arise. Yeah.
But you know, it's not like there's no such thing as
no
problems in anything.
Problemless.
But the thing is that the problem there is the problem where when you're talking about homeschooling, people are going to compare. People are going to go, which one's better? And a definite guide, one size fits all measurement, which is not true. Different situation is better for different people in different situations. You know, different solutions, different problems need different solutions. And thus, there's no such thing as one thing that fits everything. For some people, formal schooling is the best. Imagine people who do not have any access to education, you know, who have their environment, everyone's illiterate. Formal schooling have helped solve illiteracy.
Back in the... exactly what I was going to say. So, like, back in those days when not many people are well educated, how do you expect the not well educated to educate the people? So if you have, you know, a place where these well-educated people can educate, then,
you know, one thing I find interesting though is that in Malaysia there is a time when illiteracy was very, very low, even in commoners, you know. Some people believe no because they take the Western Oriental concept of it, but no, we had a very low count of illiteracy. But people from outside talk about how capable how intellectually and academically able our people are.
The thing is that
when did that drop happen?
I think the thing is that we used to already have an education system. Like, it's probably not a systemized this universal system, but it's an education institution that already exists in the culture.
But then, like, how did the illiteracy suddenly rise?
Maybe because of the formal institution, the introduction of the formal institution. It's not something we're used to, and not really catered for us. It was
no. Illiteracy is not being able to read in the first place. Read or speak, like, you know, read or write. You know.
But like, I feel like it could be because of the introduction of outside values which aren't exactly accustomed to us,
and then a drop happens.
From there.
It's
so
not
it
that
starts
then
to deteriorate from there.
Wait, hold a second. In the first place, the introduction of, like, a modern school is exclusivity.
Yes, that's
so at its root, at its core, the system in the first place was exclusive. I'm not sure if this is where we want to venture into in this episode.
We could go in another episode, perhaps.
But anyway, so
I think point given. So
yes,
it's understood.
So formal education does help end illiteracy. Perhaps there could be a better system of formal education, but it does have that plus. You know, not to negate the good positive effects of formal schooling. How many great scholars we have that are born out of formal education? Schooling, parents are born out of formal schooling. You know,
I myself have been getting into formal education recently. So
not school, but university, definitely education.
So formal education institution, and it does help me a lot in the sense that when it's being taught in a formal education manner, it helps me to see things when things are arranged linearly, so I can see things better, because sometimes it's hard for me to grasp certain things. I can grasp other things, but not that thing. Because
sometimes you learn things either intuitively or like by collecting many pieces. So you know this field, but you do not know it in this very organized, arranged manner. So sometimes,
So when it's formalized in that way,
it arranges
things. Sometimes you need a good, healthy mix of both. So I think
I mean, I think, like, for example, when we were taking our end of school test exam thing, which we needed to learn it from the syllabus because, we need to follow that syllabus. There were moments when we were like very confused with these things, and then people are like the teachers and the, other people who were there, like, oh, don't you know this thing? And then they're like giving us like the linear first introduction arrangement. Then we're like, oh, it's those things, and then we see it in such a broad aspect. And then
sometimes we
already out of the syllabus, and they're like, no, don't go there.
That's like, it is still part of it, but it's not part of the syllabus.
Yes. So like, when we know from our non-formal education, from our homeschooling method, we get to learn a lot. Sometimes a lot more. But if we are not careful of it, which we were not because we didn't see it, we may not have arranged it linearly, which may have messed it up a bit. Then when we have this formal education, like, we as in like you, and like speaking for you right now, then when you have this formal education, things are arranged linearly, so you have all this information you already have, you get to arrange them in these proper folders, then you see them clearer.
Yeah.
And thus, actually, these two come hand in hand.
Yes.
They help each other out.
So
which again goes, so there's no such thing as one better or the other.
That's why I feel like it is something that you should have a healthy mix of, manage it.
Thus, even
together.
if you are formal schooling,
you need, because
you can still out of your school.
Because the thing is that myself included, all my sisters, when they were at school, when you were at school and such, when you got home, you still learn at home from our mother herself, or
like from books.
Yeah.
Or
so you still do that homeschooling.
Yeah.
That's why switching to homeschool wasn't much of a drastic change.
It was drastic for me.
It is drastic, but then not as it would have been if we did not. If you did not face.
It wasn't drastic in the sense of like our education. It was drastic emotionally.
The whole environment and such, but like in the sense of education, you could.
It wasn't that bad.
Like for example, if the school is there's a sudden holiday, I think you will.
Yeah, we still learn.
Yeah, you still learn.
I mean, when we have holidays, we still learn at home.
So
we rarely have
there's not much of a.
Yeah. So even if you are formal schooling, you do having that non-formal.
And it might have been the reason why. I do think it is most probably the reason why you could you were a bit too fast with the syllabus.
Probably
because
we
still learning
learn.
at home. So not just during the school hours.
Yeah.
So school hours is like almost half the day.
Yeah.
So that's why you already reached the end by April, which is half.
Point. Parents do need to be parents or guardians, do need to be very, very participative in the children's education. Like, that's a very important point for children to be able to grow holistically, because if you're formal schooling, to have that out of school schooling is very cool. And if you're homeschooling, to have that touch of formal education style is also cool. So those two things come hand in hand. Another point I think which is very important to highlight is that one problem with formal schooling, which is undeniable, is the exam oriented study method
and environment.
Which yes, it exists to a measure, because school, yes, it's for you to learn, but it's also undeniable that it's also for you to be able to get employed. And people wanting to employ, they like to have things measured quantitatively, because
it will if you were to take things from in the sense of convenience wise, it is more convenient to have that being sorted first before you call them for an interview, because
there's too many.
So in the first place, it's very good to have that.
And so that's why they have these exams to measure how good you are. And in the short view of like just schools, it is also to measure whether you have studied enough for the year, can you advance to the next stuff, etc.
Do you need extra help in this field, in this subject?
However, some time in time, it has become you only study for the exams instead of the exams measures how well you are studying. And that just
defeats the purpose of the education.
Yeah.
Because you no longer exactly... Sometimes, taking my own experience when I took my exams, I actually really forgot quite a lot of things. Because some of the things I already know, but then I forgot the exact detail
of
thing of
right.
because I learned those things.
I
learned
for that.
just for the exam, and not because I was learning. Like the things that I learned, some of the things I learned, I do still remember, but then at the same time, there's quite a lot of things that kind of just
goes away.
Yeah,
I mean, because I think the things that when you no longer study to learn, you no longer learn full stop.
Yeah.
Because when the desperation is to pass exams, then your aim, if your aim to study is to learn, you would be looking for the best way to learn. So you'd be looking for the best way for you to know more stuff, the best way for you to, grow your knowledge, etc. But when your focus is on passing exams, you'd be looking for the best way to pass the exams, which is not often learning. Sometimes learning can... Okay, is this too controversial? I think not. Exams, sometime in time, we arrange exams in certain ways. I think it's because of that whole quantitative approach.
Yeah.
They want, the teachers want exact ways, or the people who mark the exams want exact ways to mark these papers. They want exact wrong, right. Exact, they do not want...
a very objective system.
Yes. So when in creating the objective systems cannot work for everything. There are subjective questions, but when you want to objectify that subjective question, you create very rigid rules to score your exam.
Yeah.
Which means that sometimes, even if you know more, it either A, doesn't mean that you would be getting a higher mark, or B, you'd be getting a lower mark.
Yeah.
Take, for example, in my math tests, I often had problems when I had to do formal learning. I often had problems because I calculate my work in the formula that is not what they want.
Yeah, it's not the one that's taught.
That's the one that's taught, not the one that they want in that thing.
Yeah.
Say, for example, they want me to look for something because they want to see, what they want to measure is whether I can do it in this way.
Yeah.
If I do it in a different way, even if I get the answer, even if it is simpler or perhaps better, I'm not saying it is better here, but even if it is better, even if it shows that I have a higher grasp for mathematics, it is not what they want because of the objectified system.
They should change the question. We want to know if you're good at making this specific.
Then they would say that this is a lower education tier of education, because you're supposed to be able to think out. Okay, here's the thing. That was a problem, Then some people in the education system realize that that's a problem. That's why they created the high-oriented skill, higher order thinking skill. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. KBAT, kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi. So they created that system. This is a Malaysia thing, sorry. If they created the system to make you think out of the box. In this method, they do not explicitly instruct you to do something. They encourage you to think out of the box, to come up with your own interpretations, to define it your own way. However, the people who are marking the papers are like, okay, but then how do we mark this?
Yeah.
Then they try to objectify that even more subjective question, and it becomes even more confusing,
It's like in one of the subjects, something about how the definition of certain categories, which are like, for example, I'll just pick as an example, part of nature, on land nature.
Okay.
We could have deers and horses, but not trees, because trees are part of plants. So you can't put them as land, because when they want to
see how confusing that was? Yeah, that's how confusing it is.
Because when they want to mark the paper, is this considered as a land nature or a plant? Let's just put it as plants. But the student should know that it's plants, not land, like land.
So you have to learn these unstated rules.
Yeah.
You know? So So all of that, A, defeats the purpose of learning, and B, sometimes it is more frustrating, and so because you don't see the joy in learning. So but then you learn that this is learning. And when that's not fun, you don't want to learn anymore. Even the non-exam oriented learning, you know? So that becomes a problem, which is not cool, you know? Another, I think, issue is the I think that's that's it. That's so long. I think we can make another topic where we discuss about exams.
Yeah.
That's interesting, you know? Make sure to leave your thoughts and ideas in the comment section. If you feel like you want to know a bit more about homeschooling, you can also ask that, because we've been asked a lot of questions about homeschooling, and
we're kind of used to answering them.
This is more like a general introduction to homeschooling.
Yeah.
The many types of homeschooling, how we homeschool specifically, not like how you should homeschool, because that depends on your case.
As we've just mentioned, but how so subjective to
and also like the difference that we see in homeschool versus formal school from what we've experienced or seen, like seeing this experience,
Witness,
from our experience,
perhaps.
From our experience or what we witnessed, and C, to clarify that it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all solution, and it also shouldn't be a one is absolutely better than the other.
Or it should be totally, or like, and also it shouldn't be, it should be totally this or totally that.
Yeah. Homeschooling has become a hot topic because of COVID.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, and people are like, how do you homeschool? The best thing to learn is that learn from what our parents, specific more to our mother, did.
Yeah.
Learn from trial and error, and hope that it doesn't cost your child's life.
Because the thing is that, you know, as long as you don't do something too drastically bad, you have, if you're starting with homeschool, the homeschooling thing is starting from, like, you know, when the child is small, you have, I say 15 years.
Yeah.
At least.
The most important part to know about teaching and learning is to know that learning is not about how much multiplication can you memorize.
Yeah.
How many elements on the...
It's more to how you could apply the things that you learn.
Yes.
Because that shows that you actually understand.
Yes.
Rather
it's about
than
understanding.
memorize.
Yeah. One thing that people... Oh, I hate trivia questions. People often go to you like, okay, you're a smart kid, here's a trivia question. Trivia question doesn't mean you are smart, you know? It just means you memorize things.
Yeah.
Not saying that high memorization skills doesn't show a level of intelligence. Perhaps it does, you know.
Or that memorization is not important, because memorization is important for a lot of things.
It's just that that's not how you measure.
You should have...
It's about how you understand.
I mean, that's the thing about
how
exams are supposed to be in the first place. Is how you memorize it, how you memorize, and then how you understand it, and how you could apply it. I think
how you understand first, then you memorize.
Understand.
You know, understanding is you should understand. If you memorize the multiplication table first, then you understand the concept. It's a bit counterintuitive.
So you need to understand the concept behind the multiplication.
Then you
memorize the multiplication. Then you apply it.
Then you apply it
to when you want to say how many clocks are there, and there's like 3 boxes of 10 clocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to us ramble up to this point.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the most rambling, not the most, but one of the most rambling episodes.
Our previous episode was very rambling.
Yeah.
Much more rambling than this one. Yeah. But yeah, I am very, very, very passionate about education. So if you guys want to have a talk about education, please be my guest. Be our guest. I love education. Like, I love academics for myself, and I feel like education is such an integral part of society which needs to be discussed more often, you know? which is probably why one of my biggest role model and the person who inspires me all the time is Allahyarham Tan Sri Omar Muhammad Aeshah.
Yeah.
He played such a big role in our formal education system, even though he was the one who like did the whole exam thing, which is one thing that I'm complaining about. I like read into his idea, his concept of why he did it and everything, and all of them are positive things. And he believed in the concept of the importance of homeschooling, like not in the sense of like to homeschool and not go to formal school, but like for parents to teach
the education when you have education at school and then also have the education at home.
He's like talking about how important it is for parents to have taught children in the first place. In
Before
fact,
they
he
went to
believes that by the time you go to school, you're supposed to be able to read already by then. He's like, schooling is not so much of learning educationally in that sense, you know. It is more to, like, to have like that more systematic
That's the thing.
And also to like have that social environment.
That's the thing. Schooling as a method of learning how to read is something a long time ago. Like it should not be something that is still practiced today.
Schooling
because
has become a crutch.
Nowadays, the parents have already went to school and have already learned how to read. Back then, the parents haven't went to school and
not like saying like in just in general.
In general, So nowadays, it's already. I mean, perhaps if there are certain special cases,
there are not special cases. There are,
like,
that's fortunately,
So in those cases, then yes, accommodate those cases, but you can't generalize to everyone.
Schooling has become a crutch. It has become this thing which parents or guardians lean onto and depend on, and then they it's like a drop it, done. They don't, anyway, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. And
leave us either a comment or an audio message, and be sure to follow us on our social media and such.
And see you guys next time.
Bye.